when you
will
need
you
it.
go to the next slide, please? All right, so as a reminder, today's panel, what is your role in research, is part of our Star Scholars Program seminar series. So again, we have 3 seminars left in this series that you can attend and RSVP at this link, which we'll put in the chat. In addition, we'll also be holding the Star Scholars Winter Program, which consists of workshops during the winter semester. And we'll talk a little bit more about that opportunity later today. Next slide, please. So there's going to be a couple, oh, go ahead.
All right. Sorry, so today we just have a couple of objectives for our seminar. The first is that we're going to share the goals, the benefits, and then some of the admissions information for the Star Scholars Program. And then of course, the main reason you're here is to hear from some other students who have research experience, and they're going to sit on a panel and they're going to talk quite a bit about their experiences. And of course, you'll have a chance to get some of your questions answered. Next slide. And so we have a few reminders for you. So, you know, we are all in a post-pandemic world right now. And so you all kind of know these things about Zoom. Just try to keep your mic muted at all times unless you are invited to speak. We do encourage you to use the chat for questions as we're going through the slides. When we are doing the presentation, for every question we ask the panelists, any questions you come up with related to that particular question, put in the chat. We'll answer them all kind of in batches between questions. And then also for accessibility, we do have the live transcript enabled if you would like to use it. I personally find it very helpful. So you can click the 3 buttons in the More tab at the very bottom of the Zoom screen. And there is, there's a, in the list, live transcript. So you can go ahead and enable that if you like. And then this is just a reminder, if this is your very first seminar this fall, please go ahead and fill out the pre-survey. We're going to go ahead and put that link in the chat right now. Only fill it out if this is your first survey. Thank you, Maina, for putting that in the chat. All right, next slide.
All right, so to get us started, we're going to tell you a few things about the Star Scholars Program in general. And so STAR stands for Students Tackling Advanced Research, and the program is aiming to build scholarship, transferable skills, academics, and research experience for students that join the program here. Next slide, please. Great. So the main goals here of the program are to prepare students for research, increase the number of students that are conducting research at these more advanced levels, and provide inclusive academic support for diverse groups of students. And we do this through a mentoring program that pairs students with graduate student mentors here in the program, such as Lolita and myself. And we also will have informational panels, skill coaching workshops, scientific talks by current faculty, so you have opportunities to interact with them, and professional networking opportunities. So seminars like these in the fall are just the start to the program in general. Next slide, please.
So in terms of eligibility, the Star Scholars Program is a program that actually seeks to increase the pipeline of underrepresented students into psychology-related fields. So with that, that means that students who are targeted for the program are those who are from historically underrepresented groups. So that's students of color, students who are first gen, students who are international or undocumented, LGBTQ students, and others across the gender spectrum, those who have experienced financial hardship, and also students who have shown a demonstrated commitment to increasing equity and inclusion in psychology. So if you feel like you fall into any of these categories, then Star Scholars could be the right program for you. Next slide, please. So thinking about the selection criteria, what exactly are we looking for in addition to that previous slide in terms of the groups we're targeting? Well, first, we're definitely looking for students who have strong academic performance, right? So we don't have a hard GPA cutoff, but obviously we're expecting the GPA to be relatively high. So, you know, the closer you are getting to a 4.0, the better. Again, there is no hard cutoff or no, you know, requirement that you're above a certain GPA, but we are looking at academics. Next, we do want you to show some interest in psychology or biopsych research, but this program is targeted for students who have little to no research experience, and that's very important. So maybe you've taken a psych class or you've done some kind of something in your academic career where you've been exposed to psychology research or biopsych research, and it piqued your interest. So in the application, we want to hear about why you're interested in this program, keeping in mind that if you've already been working at a lab, if you're an upper level student and you've worked in 2-3 labs, you've got an honors thesis kind of in your head that you're going to do, this may not be the best program for you because we do have limited space. And again, we are targeting those who don't have experience with psych research or much experience at all, maybe a semester. In addition, we expect you to be looking for structured mentorship. We want you to be eager for the kinds of mentorship and help that a graduate student and then all of the faculty who will be coming in and speaking to our STAR Scholars can provide, right? And so it's not a class, it's not a club, but it is a program that is, for students who are looking for that mentorship. That means that you'd be the best fit if that sounds good to you. And then finally, we do prioritize underclassmen. So, if you're in your final year, the idea behind this is that you won't necessarily have the time to pursue research opportunities, right? If you're a senior. If you are a senior and maybe you're expecting to do, an extra year or something like that, definitely apply, but keep in mind that STAR Scholars does not actually put you into a lab. We're giving you all the tools that you need to succeed once you do get into a lab. And in order to get into a lab, you need more time in school, right? So that's why we prioritize freshmen, sophomores, and juniors, although some seniors have been accepted. Alrighty, so if you have any questions, if you're interested in applying, please visit us at our website. Maina, thank you so much for putting the URL in the chat. You can obviously also reach out via email. You have about a month to get your application in, and so check it out if any of this sounds interesting to you. Please, please, please look at the application and reach out if you have questions.
All right, so just now, before we introduce the panelists, we'd like to give a few basic tips for students that are interested in getting started with undergraduate research, but maybe haven't yet. Next slide. So first of all, we don't have to come up with your own brilliant or new idea to get started with research. Most opportunities will use what we call a mentor-mentee model or apprentice model, meaning that you'll probably start out by helping a current graduate student or collaborating on projects in the lab that already exist. And then as you learn, you may come up with your own interests and ideas that you might be able to pursue later on in the lab. Next slide. And also, you don't need to know a bunch of advanced skills that are already being used in the lab to begin. So oftentimes, research assistants will start with more basic tasks alongside the current lab members. And then as you learn more about the lab group and the project that you're working on, you can build more extensive and advanced skills. And remember, if you're interested in trying something new, just reach out and ask your mentors.
All right, so another important point to keep in mind is that you should be taking advantage of your transferable skills. So, you're learning all kinds of things in your other classes, the other activities that you're doing on campus, maybe you have a part-time job, that kind of thing. So you are acquiring skills like communication, skills like taking initiative, analytical skills, teamwork, maybe you have a strong work ethic. All of those things will be put to good use as a research assistant. So don't discount those skills. Next slide. And then once you are in a lab, you will actually find that taking initiative is going to generally be rewarded. You can go deeper into the lab's work by letting the lab manager or your supervisor know that you're interested in reading papers that relate to the purpose of the lab or the project that you're working on. I know, having worked with undergrad RAs, that the ones who ask the questions tended to be the ones who were signaling to me that they were ready for more responsibility. And as someone who loves research myself, that's always a really nice thing to have. It's nice to have that kind of initiative on my team. And so that's exactly what you want to do if your goal is to go to graduate school and pursue a career in research. Be the person asking questions, ask for other ways that you can get involved with the project. Okay, so now we are going to introduce our undergraduate research panel. So if all of the panelists, if you all don't mind turning your cameras on so that we can see your beautiful faces once you start speaking, that would be great. I want to take this opportunity to remind you all that you can ask questions during the panel using the chat. So after every panelist has answered each question, we're going to read any questions from the chat that you may have asked. Okay, so feel free to just throw them in the chat as they come to you. And we'll also do a larger Q&A at the end. And I will go ahead and I will also cut and paste that into the chat so you all can see it here. And then if you go to the next slide, please, so we can meet our panelists. All righty. Oh, no, wait. Yep. So we're going to just stick to this slide while we introduce our panelists. Here they are. And if we want to give you all, why don't you all just in turn unmute yourself, just say what year you are, what your major is, and then the name of the lab and the project that you're working on. And if you're comfortable, Sarah, why don't you go ahead and get us started?
For sure. Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm a senior majoring in BCN and I'm minoring in crime and justice. And I work in Dr. Martin Sarter's lab in the cognitive neurosystems lab. And I am currently working on a project looking at genetic variations with sustained attention.
Thank you. All right, Monica.
Hi, I'm Monica. I'm also a senior majoring in BCN. I'm also minoring in biochemistry and applied statistics. I'm working in the psychopathology, population health, and genetics lab led by Dr. Richmond Rakerd. And right now I'm working on a thesis aiming to see if there's an association between infection and neurodegenerative diseases.
Awesome, thank you. All right, Ikra, if you don't mind introducing yourself.
Sure, am I audible?
Yes, your voice is there's a little bit of like feedback, but go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, sure. So I'm Ikra, and I've completed my master's in psychology from Aligarh Muslim University in India. And I'm currently working on a project which is focused on Muslim women entrepreneurs in India, which is in collaboration with a professor in the Özyeğin University in Istanbul, Turkey.
Awesome, thank you so much. And Ikra is actually an alum of Star Scholars. She was in the program. And so of our panelists, she is our Star Scholars representative. So thank you so much for being here, especially being international.
Yes.
And all right.
Thank you.
Yep. And then Diane, go ahead and unmute and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Diane. I'm also a senior. I'm studying psychology and linguistics. The lab that I'm in is in linguistics. It's called the Contact, Change, and Cognition Lab. I'm currently working on a project relating to sociolinguistics and word boundaries, but I'm also doing a thesis in psychology on like cultural psychology and cultural influences in mental health.
All right, perfect, thank you so much. Okay, so Cindy, if you like to, you can go ahead and stop the share and we're just going to, just go through these questions with our panelists at this time. And all right, so starting off, let's get into how you got the position. So whoever would like to go first, just tell us how you chose to get involved in research and how did you find the research group or the project that you worked with, and what steps did you take?
I can go first. So sophomore year, I did not join research my freshman year. I started my sophomore year. I was really curious. I just wanted to see what was out there. I was really enjoying all my psych classes. And I ended up working at one point in 3 different labs at the same time that I found on the weekly psychology emails. Anytime I saw that there was a research position, I looked at it, saw if it fit my interest. And then the lab that I ended up now is actually kind of a funny story. I had Dr. Martin Sarter for Psych 230, and I felt like I was in way over my head in the class, and I went into office hours and I told him, I have no idea what I'm doing in this class. I feel really behind. I'm really nervous. And he told me that I had no chance and I should just drop. And that really, really upset me. So I studied really hard. I worked my butt off in the class. And then at the end of the semester, he actually offered me a position in his lab. And so yeah, going to office hours is a great connection to do. So that's how I got into it. And then I got really close with my GSI in the course, who is now my like grad student mentor.
I did actually start cold emailing even before freshman year because I thought I wanted to major in neuroscience and do research in neuroscience. And I was lucky enough to join a lab that I worked in for a year. And then I decided to leave that lab to pursue other opportunities. And in winter of my junior year, I started cold emailing again. And at that point, I had a more clear vision of what I was actually interested in. Going into college, I really had no idea. You only have high school to go off of. And so I was able to, I guess, refine my search more to my actual interest. And so when I got an interview for a lab, I think that I was lucky enough to have it be really something I was interested in, and that showed. And my research mentor was impressed with how well I knew that this is what I wanted to do. And so that's how I got that position.
I'd like to go next. So this particular position I got through an email that I received through the fellowship that I'm currently a part of, which is led by Foundation. And they sent an email. The professor was looking for some research assistants. So I applied, sent in my CV. He interviewed more than 20 people, and then he just took 2 of them. Luckily, I was one of them because I showed him my previous experience. So I have 2 experience by now after I completed the STAR Scholars Program. The previous one was also on women. And that one also I got from my professor, because she taught me one semester, one subject. She texted in the WhatsApp group saying that I'm working on a certain project. I'm looking for field researchers and somebody who could write a report on it. So I just immediately sent her a DM, direct message, and she invited me to her chamber for a small interview. Similarly, I got these 2 positions by reaching out to professors, sending in my CV, and I got it that way.
So I got my position in the linguistics lab that I'm in right now by going to the linguistics department open house in my freshman year, which I believe the psychology department does as well. And I thought that the research that the professor that I'm working with now was doing was really interesting. And so then I emailed her afterwards and was like, hey, like, I saw what you guys were doing, and I think it's really interesting. Do you have any open research like projects that I can join in on? And she was really open to the idea and let me join in. And I think like for people who have like joint interests in other fields, like you can definitely look into those as well, because I know psychology like touches upon a lot of different other fields. I have also volunteered in another research lab that I ended up joining by expressing my interest in my professor's lab, like right at the beginning of the course that I was taking with him. And then he was like, well, like, let's see how you do in this class first. And then at the end, he said, yeah, like you can join in on our lab meetings, like take part in the research projects. And then after I got a clearer idea of what I was interested in psychology, and maybe what I wanted to do for my thesis, I emailed another professor that had a similar research interest as to what I was interested in, and asked if like she would be willing to supervise my thesis research. So I kind of had like a couple of different ways of getting into research.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. And I hope we're noticing these themes of taking initiative, reaching out, asking people, right? Like the opportunities are not going to fall on your lap. And I also see that someone asked a question in the chat about, not having experiences because you transferred, but a lot of people don't start getting into research until like their sophomore or junior year. So you're okay. Just again, take initiative. Because of the pandemic, essentially the whole campus was, not in person. Everyone has been online. Things are now starting to be back more in person, but do not feel like you have hurt your chances just because you transferred in. And so anyway, thank you all so much for sharing that information. And now Mena is going to take us into some questions that relate to actually your roles and responsibilities in your various labs.
Yeah, so also just quickly, I wanted to address, again, this question in the chat of kind of lacking personal connections with professors. And I was curious if you have advice for how, like, you emailed, which maybe means like you didn't know that professor, you just thought that their research was interesting, but sounds like you were in that professor's class already or had met them. So how do you kind of build those personal connections with a professor when you're in class with them or something like that?
Sorry, I don't know if you were cutting in and out for other people as well. Were you asking us panelists that question?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, well, yeah, I don't know if I should speak to this one because I didn't get my current research through a professor I had a class with, but that was one of the avenues I was trying when I was looking to get a research position. And I think a big piece of advice that I wish I would have known about that is professors sometimes will take multiple emails to answer. They're very busy. Sometimes they just get lost. Don't take it personally. I definitely took it personally. I was like, wow, okay, that sucks, but keep trying to get a hold of them.
So two of the labs that I've worked in were professors that I had, and office hours are your best friend. Going in and talking to them, you don't need to talk to them about their research. You don't even need to talk to them about the class, just getting to know them and asking them questions and like how they got to where they are. And everybody likes to talk about themselves, and professors aren't any different. And so it makes them really excited when people just come in and want to talk to them. So I know office hours can always seem intimidating. Freshman year, I think I attended a total of 2. But sophomore year, I pushed myself out of my comfort zone and I went all the time, and I got to know my professors on like a first name basis. It was awesome to see like them wave to me in like this 300-person lecture just because I'm a face they recognize. And the more they recognize you, to be honest, they kind of expect a little more now because now they know you. So you're going to work a little harder. You're going to be a bit more curious because now you kind of formed this good relationship. So I would definitely do office hours for sure.
Great advice. Thank you. So now, again, just talking about roles and responsibilities, and feel free to flag me if my mic is cutting in and out again. So do you attend lab meetings or work with other students in your work, including graduate students?
Yeah, definitely. For one of the labs that I worked in, lab meetings weren't required, but I decided to attend anyway because I thought that the content was interesting. And it's definitely like a really good chance to get to know like what like other people in this area are doing apart from like the professor that you're working with or that you want to work with. And for my other one, it was required to attend meetings, and it was used as like kind of like a brainstorming, like troubleshooting session. And so, yeah, I think like it's a pretty integral part of the like research experience to be attending a meeting.
I think in my case, it all started virtually. I don't know if you guys are talking about legit being in the lab and do meetings, because my professor is in Turkey and he hired me a couple of months back, and we have meetings every 2 weeks, something like that, and in between as well, when sometimes we have some priority work. So last week we had some research proposal that was supposed to be sent in, and there was a deadline attached to it. So I, with my team, I have 2 more research assistants. We have 3 of us working on this project. So we divided the work, that who will do which part of the proposal, and so that we can submit it on time. That way, and other than that, we were working on the questionnaire of the project. And so we built in the questionnaire. We divided that we're going to talk to these Indian Muslim entrepreneurs, have a conversation with them. So each of us would schedule interviews with these women, talk to them and see the challenges. And accordingly, we added questions in our questionnaire so that it aligns with our sample, what generally their issues are. So yeah, we together work in and divide the work and kind of discuss that in meetings with our professor. That's what we've been doing in the past month, I guess.
My lab, so I working in 2, I just want to like show 2 different sides. So when I worked in like the social psychology lab, all of our meetings were on Zoom because we were mostly working on like paper projects of like analyzing data and reviewing information and literature review. So all of those were online and they were mandatory, and obviously mandatory. I attended every single one and I really enjoyed it. For my lab now with Dr. Sarter, we have 2 different types of lab meetings. We have journal club meetings, and then we have our actual lab meetings with our graduate student that we're basically assigned to. So journal club is once a week. All of the undergrads and all of the grad students in the lab come together and we review a paper. So usually everyone gets assigned one a semester, and you basically make a short little presentation about one of the previous papers in the lab, just so everybody's like aware of like what the basis of our research is, where everything's coming from. And then in our weekly lab meetings with just our graduate student, we talk about the steps that we're going to take the next week. What information did we learn? What things went wrong? How we need to change and adapt things in the lab, all that kind of stuff. So it depends on who you're with. The professor will probably have you do different things with lab meetings. Personally, Dr. Sarter doesn't attend our lab meetings with all undergrads. If he wants to talk to you, he will email you personally and you will schedule a meeting with him. Or if you want to talk to him, you talk to him one-on-one, but he doesn't usually attend the weekly ones.
So I also have kind of contrasting experiences with lab meetings. In the lab I'm in right now, it's really small. And so we only have monthly lab meetings in which we go over any updates, announcements, and then kind of share what we're doing, ask for advice, kind of a brainstorming session like Diane was talking about. But in the neuroscience lab that I used to work in, we didn't have any formal lab meetings that undergraduates were required to attend. It was just a journal club every once in a while. And so, yeah, like Sarah was saying, we would just go over a paper. And I just remember thinking I was way in over my head with those papers because they're very technical. And but it was a great way to, I guess, learn more about what the lab was doing outside of my own task that I was helping my graduate student mentor with.
Great, thanks everyone. So the next question is what tasks you started out performing, and if this is applicable, how you progressed over your time working in that role.
I can start with that. Lit reviews. A lot of time spent doing lit reviews, especially during the pandemic. It's an easy thing to just do at home in my own time. And then I progressed to doing a thesis, which I'm working on now, based off of the lit review, or I guess stemming from the lit review that I was doing. And so it was a great transition because I felt like I already had a good background knowledge of the subject.
And really quickly, can you just tell everyone what a lit review is?
Yeah, of course. So a literature review is just, I guess, picking a specific topic that you're interested in researching and then seeing all of the research that's already out there about that topic. And so I reviewed papers on infections leading to dementia, and I had a spreadsheet about all of the different variables that these papers were testing, the type of studies, what they found, if they found anything. And so from there, I generated a more specific research question, and I had a clear image of what the gaps in the research were.
In my research, I started at the very bottom of the totem pole. We work with rats and mice. And when I first started, my sole responsibility was to take rats out of their cage, put them in a transport box, walk them down the hallway, and put them in another box and press start. That was my only role. I did that for about a month and a half. And then I started asking more questions, being engaged, just started going to lab when I didn't have scheduled shifts to just see what people were doing. What was everybody else doing? How can I help? And then I slowly started getting more and more. So then I started helping other graduate students genotype animals. I started helping with surgeries. I started with the cleanup, all the prep, analyzing data. And then once I was able to prove that I was able to handle every single step individually, I was actually offered my project. I didn't ask to start my thesis, to be completely honest with you guys. I was offered the project because they saw like my dedication, my work ethic. And before they would officially give me the responsibility, I had to come up with an hour presentation of a literature review, what I would do, my whole methods based on all of the other papers and all the projects that we're working on. So that started for me by my second semester junior year. So for about a year, I just learned all the steps one by one and slowly started getting more responsibility in the lab.
Can you guys hear me? Okay, I can't see any of the controls on my screen right now. Like Zoom is glitching really hard for me. But I think for me, I got started in a really small lab. So the professor that I was working with, it was like either her first or second year here. And so she was like really new. And the project that I was working on was also really new. And so I got to basically work with the project from its like conceptualization to its implementation. And now I'm in the process of writing that experiment up in a paper. And so like rather than like having hierarchies of work for me with that project, I just got to work with it from like the beginning of the project to like now, like towards the end of it. And then that has also allowed me to like build up a lot of different types of skills. And then in working with other labs, that has also helped me build up other skills that I could then take into my thesis project. And then, so that way when working on my thesis project, it wasn't that I like was already working with a professor and then I took over one of their projects for my thesis. It was that like I already had an idea for what I wanted to do. I knew how I wanted to do it, and I could just put that into place. So yeah, that's how it worked.
I think for me, it has been more like, in an academic writing way. So I did not know how exactly you write in the academic professional writing, what words and how you could, make a sentence and show it like a research work being done and not like a normal thing being written. So I started my first report that was through the data I myself collected. So I was alone for that previous project I did. I interviewed 9 people, 9 religious leaders from 3 different religions. One was Christianity. I interviewed 3 fathers. The other was Hinduism. I interviewed 3 pundits. They are the religious leaders over there. And I interviewed 3 imams as well, which is from Islam. So these 3 different religions, I interviewed these people, recorded their, responses, also wrote down extra stuff that they were saying. I had this huge data with me, and then it took some time to actually convert it into words and make a report out of it. And so I made this detailed report myself. It was the first time I was doing it. So I was looking out for help at how exactly a survey research report looks like. And for that, I also reached out to the Star Scholar mentors, and they helped me how a survey research report should look like. And so I submitted one, and my professor just loved it. And she is actually planning to give me a letter of appreciation for that as well. And she's also planning to give me another project because she liked my writing. And the current project I'm working on, this one again has taught me so much already. So one thing I recently learned while writing a research proposal in a deadline pressure, because he just told us a week before that there is this opportunity and we can actually get our project funded and you should apply for it, send a proposal. So I didn't know how a proposal looks like ever before. So I was Googling it, and then he sent me some samples, and I figured out how to write one, and I sent it, and we independently worked in pressure. So the transferable skill that I feel I got recently, into me is how to work in pressure, how teamwork works. And I was not well. One of my team members was not well. She had fever. So we also had to manage work in that deadline and had personal challenges attached to it. So we had to do it, manage it, and showed up teamwork and showed up dedication, showed up how to work in a pressure situation. And eventually the many skills that, even the analytical skills I learned. And eventually it was a great experience. We submitted it and a professor loved it. It was the first time we made it. So yeah, till now I've been able to do these things and learn a lot already as a new researcher.
Thank you, Ikra. That is a perfect sort of transition into our next question, which is for everyone else, what are some of the transferable skills that you used in this role, either that you had known before and brought in, or that you learned in your role and are going to take on to new positions?
For me, I did a summer internship for a company that did research on whether products were safe and had safe chemicals, like a chemical risk assessment company. Yes, that was the words I'm looking for. And they had me do a lit review. And so that was a very useful skill. I had good experience. I knew like what details to look out for, how to make it presentable, how to write up a report about the gaps in the literature. And then the other big transferable skill, which is specific to the research I'm doing right now in my thesis, is statistical programming language. I'm working with SAS, taking classes in R. And so those are like great things that I'm really lucky to have, or I'm happy to have on my resume to then bring up in interviews for jobs later on and for grad school and things.
I think something really important that I've learned in my lab experience is how to deal with floating deadlines, because you can never rush an experiment. You can never make it go as fast as you want. You can't have a set deadline. You can have a goal, but you can't have a set deadline. And when I first started, that really, really freaked me out. The idea of, well, I don't know when this is going to be done. I don't know how long this is going to take. Like, how much am I going to be doing for this? And over my time, what I found with like these like big floating deadlines is just making little deadlines for myself every week. Like, okay, this week I want to have this data analysis done. And next week I want to make sure that the animals are blah, 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 blah. Like just setting goals for myself, because I felt like my freshman year when I had like a big project at the end, I was like, well, I'll do it the week before, you know, like everybody else. But I've really learned how to deal with those deadlines that you just really don't know how to approach. And I think research is a really good way to, like, you have to learn it when you're in research.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm not sure that I had like really like big overall skills that I learned, but I think like through the like accumulation of all the research that I've done, I've like, there are a lot of little things that you like don't realize that you need to know how to do until you like actually get into research. So like knowing how to like write up and submit an IRB, like what, like how to like make a Qualtrics survey and then send it out to people. Like how does like participant like compensation look like and stuff like that. So like they're not so much like big like this is like one thing that I can point to, but they're all like really important like little things that you know how to do, that like if like the next person asks you like, oh, like can you like do this for me, it's something that I can say like, yes, like I do know how to do that and I can do it on my own and I can get it done.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. And one thing I want you all to keep in mind too, because someone did ask a question about skills and what you need going into these positions, is that by and large, everything you need to know will be taught to you. I swear, just showing initiative, interest, doing the things that demonstrate that you are reliable and consistent, that is going to be enough to get you the position. I mean, honestly and truly, you do not need to know how to write an IRB. You do not need to know how to handle participant payment. You don't need to know those things. Those things will be taught to you. And so just keep in mind that, and it's so corny and a lot of times it's not true, but in this case, as an undergrad seeking research opportunities, a lot of times it's purely your attitude and how much you put into getting the position will be enough. All you need to get is your foot in the door. And even if you have one research position halfway through the semester, and it's a 2-month thing, officially you have experience, and that's gonna help you get every other position that you go out for. So thank you all for sharing the different roles and the different skills that you have acquired with your experiences, because it's just so interesting to hear the different things that you all have gotten to do. Okay, so we are going to enter our last section of the panel, and this focuses on goals and future plans. And so I already know the answer to this question, but remind everyone, each of you, are you writing an honors thesis? I know it's different for Ikra. She received her master's in psychology, but for the rest of you, please share again, what is your thesis going to be, about, and give us a sense of what you're doing for that.
I am writing an honors thesis. Mine is a secondary data analysis. And so that means that there's a study that's already been done. They followed residents of New Zealand for 30 plus years and taken a lot of data about their lives, their hospital admissions. And so I'm just I got permission to analyze that data to see if there's an association between infections earlier in life and dementia later on in life.
My honors thesis is looking at, how I said before, impaired attentional performance, specifically sustained attention in mice with a genetic mutation that impacts choline transports, which sounds very intense, but basically we're looking at how does genetic mutations impact one's attention, because genetics impact everything. I am responsible right now for 50 mice. I have them do sustained attention tasks every single day. And I am testing to see if the wild type animals with the animals that were not genetically mutated perform better than these animals that were.
Sarah, this is purely for my own interest. Do the mice, do they get to know you? Like, do you think they know who you are?
Oh yeah. I have some that were like number 23 and I were best friends. 45, we don't get along very well. Yeah, no, they get to know me very well.
Cool. I've always been curious about that. Thank you. All right. Yeah, Diane, please.
Yeah. So my honors thesis is on Asian and Asian American mental health, specifically looking at what factors influence help-seeking behavior in Asian and Asian American college students. So like there's a lot of like literature out there about like different factors that could affect mental health. And I'm taking kind of a more broad view of that and looking at like, okay, so like we know that all of these things do have an influence, or like they have been shown to be correlated with help-seeking behavior, but like maybe what specifically has more of an influence, what has less of an influence. Yeah.
Awesome.
So yeah, yeah, I'm sorry.
Please go ahead. Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. So I submitted my dissertation thesis on a thesis like in June 2021, and it was on the topic body image in relation to life satisfaction amongst youth and their social and work adjustment. So I had this study based on eating disorders, and then I wanted to also show differences in the gender. So we had different questionnaire for women and for men, and the age group I studied was the 18 to 25 and then 30 group, that the youth that comes. And so it was an interesting project. We did some data analysis and we found out good results. Post that, these research experiences that I'm having, I'm trying to build up a good research base and good research background until I get into another program.
Yeah, sorry about that. I thought you already shared your thesis research, but you did not, so thank you. Okay, cool. So moving on to the next question. Has anyone presented results from any of your research at a conference or helped to write a journal article about the project? And Diane, I feel like you mentioned that you're writing something up, but yeah, everyone, please share.
Yeah, so I have, my professor encouraged me in my linguistics lab to help her write an abstract and submit it to a conference. And then we did end up getting accepted to the conference and presenting at it. Unfortunately, it was online, so it was probably a very different experience from what people would usually get in person. But yeah, I thought that was a really cool experience, and it kind of helps to like give you a clearer idea of like what exactly out of this experiment that you've done is like the core thread of those results. So,
yeah.
So mine was I'm sorry, Sarah, you go ahead.
Sorry.
It's all right. I was just tapping on the mute button. Yeah, so I presented as a co-author in a conference in February this year, earlier this year, February 2021, and this was a paper on emotional intelligence, and the whole conference was around that topic. So I did not speak in the conference because the main author was speaking, and I was there. It was my first experience to virtually experience a conference as a co-author. And it was a great experience to see how exactly you present and how things are done. What is the exact environment when you're in the conference, and how does one present it? Yeah, so that way I had this little experience as a co-author.
So in my other lab from last year, I presented at the MPA, which is the Midwestern Psychological Association, which was also online. So I really just made a poster and recorded myself and uploaded it. Wasn't very exciting. But in November, I will be presenting at the Society for Neuroscience, SFN, which I'm really excited about. And I am currently, the project that I'm working on right now for my thesis is also now being added to a paper that we're submitting to the Journal of Neuroscience. So I am currently doing my project and starting to write the background for that part of the paper.
Awesome.
Congrats, guys. That's all really cool.
It is. Okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, all that really dope stuff that you all have going on. So we are going to close out the panel with one final prepared question before we open it up to those to the participants who are here. But please share with us, how has your research work influenced your career goals or your ability to achieve them?
It's influenced my career goals. I'm actually struggling with the decision to maybe even change my path to go straight into higher education, PhD, because of how much I'm enjoying my research right now. Originally, I planned to just work for a few years and then get a master's in public health. Public health is my interest, and the lab that I'm working in now obviously has lots of public health implications. But yeah, I surprised myself with, I guess, this struggle that maybe that's not what I want to do. Maybe I want to continue doing the research I'm doing now. And so that's, I guess, really cool that I found something I like that much.
I think for me, I've kind of shifted focus to be a little bit more cultural psychology focused. And I also think, like, as a result of like my research, like thesis focus, I might not be like going into as research heavy careers in the future. And so like focusing more on like the clinical side of things, like looking into social work and stuff like that. And so, yeah, I guess my message is like, if you like try research and you like end up deciding that like maybe it's not for you, that's okay too. But I think like it has also given me like a lot of valuable skills that like I will still take with me into grad school, regardless of like what grad school program it is.
For me, so before I got into the STAR Scholars Program, I did not understand research. Well, what are the basics? How do you do it? How do you start? How do you approach for these research opportunities? I had been trying to get one for so many years, but I couldn't for some reason. But then after this STAR Scholars Program, I got the clarity on how to, approach professors, what exactly research is. And since I had no experience back then, I really wanted to see if research is what I like doing. So far, after 2 experiences as a research assistant, I've enjoyed my job. I've learned so many things, and I'm willing to actually get into research more. And I'm also exploring, other programs. So I'm developing interest in the social work programs and educational psychology as well. Mental health, women mental health. These topics really attract me. So the ultimate for I have the goal is to actually get into the program and use this experience that I have now to build up a more qualitative learning through the program I get into. That is my fresh goal I have in mind.
I think mine has definitely put probably a different light for me. I absolutely love my research. I'm loving what I'm doing, but I've loved all three of the labs that I've worked in. I did not have a negative experience in any of them. And when I was considering applying to graduate school this coming year, I didn't know where I wanted to apply or what I wanted to do because there's so many labs, so many things to consider. So I decided, just because I do like my research so much, I'm going to take 2 years and look at different research positions and take a gap year and work for a few more years and see if there's something that like really clicks, because I have fun with everything, but I think I need to find my thing. So that's what I'll be doing in the next few years, hopefully.
Awesome. Okay, well, thank you so much. That was awesome. These have been really wonderful responses. So huge thank you to our panelists. So now we have more opportunities for you all to ask questions and get answers, any lingering things on your mind. If you'd like to use your mic to speak, you can just use the raise hand function, and then we'll let you know it's okay to unmute. Otherwise, go ahead, throw your questions in the chat. And yeah, let's see if we can't get any more questions answered before we finish up our seminar for this evening. All right, I see Ziyu Zhao. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, but you can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hey everyone, sorry I cannot open the video, but just like ask a quick question. Because for start, I'm from Boston University. I'm currently a junior, majoring in psychology and public relations. For this semester, I just at the beginning of the semester, I just emailed a lot of professors to ask for research opportunities to volunteers in their labs. And I finally get in. I received 2 acceptance, and I picked one. And I heard that some of our panelists has multiple experiences at the same time. So because I'm a junior now, it's not too early for me to get things started, and I really want to go to the graduate school. So I just wonder, is it feasible to work in multiple places at the same time? Will students be able to commit to the work? Because I think I think my current lab position will last for a long time, as long as I really want to work with this professor. I'm still wondering if I can apply for the STAR program at the same time. So that's my question.
Well, before the panelists weigh in on working in multiple labs, I do just want to say that the plan right now for STAR Scholars is that it is going to be at least in person for at least part of the time. So unfortunately, unlike last year where we had participants from all over the world and all over the country, which was really cool, it seems like this application year is just going to be for University of Michigan students as it has been before this past year. So unfortunately, that means that you would not be able to apply to STAR Scholars. However, getting back to the other part of your question about being in multiple labs, hopefully there is a panelist or two who can speak to this. So please go ahead and share any thoughts for anyone who's had that experience.
Yeah, so I worked in 3 labs at once, while also taking 15 credits, which was a lot. I'm not gonna lie. I was a bit pressed and stressed a lot of the time, but to be completely honest, I wouldn't change it. I really loved everything that I was doing, and I don't think there's anything wrong with joining 2 labs, but you just need to be honest with the professors and your mentors, and you just need to say, just so you know, I'm also working in so-and-so's lab. because also some professors don't really like if you're working in numerous labs. So you definitely need to get their permission first. And then if you do get their permission, you need to be very clear about how much time you're willing and able to dedicate to each lab, and where the priority kind of falls for you. It is definitely doable. You just need to make your priorities set first and make those very clear to who you're working with.
I would like to add to that. So I'm already associated on this project. And meanwhile, I'm working on this. I am looking for other opportunities as well to join, because I know I can manage more. However, I have noticed that a couple of places I was applying at, they had clearly mentioned that you should not be involved in any other work when you're working with me. So when you're working with me, you should be full-time available for my work, which means that the professor does not want you to involve in other research work. So you have to make sure that the place where you're applying to, as Sarah said, the permission is important. Also make sure the professor does not have any problem with you working at multiple places.
Just to jump in really quick, these are great responses, and I just want to echo and affirm what has been said. I definitely think it's doable. I don't think when I was an undergrad, I was ever in multiple labs at the same time, but clearly it can be done. As Sarah said, and as Ikra just said, yeah, some faculty members may or may not like that, and so it could be a good idea to run it by them, especially if it's an intensive experience. However, most research labs, just thinking of, volunteer positions, most of them are not going to be more than a few hours a week. So it really is doable. It's just about what you can do and what you can handle. Really great question. And then we got a question in the chat that I think is also, a really good one. So excuse the pronunciation. It looks like Fiepre to me, but I'm not positive. So Fiepre Clement asked, when applying to RU or labs for undergraduate, how do I make myself stand out? And I did, thank you. And so you're concerned about your GPA, and you're afraid that's going to hurt you. And Cindy, I definitely want to hear from you, because you're a faculty member, you can speak to this best. And so I'd love your take on this before I, or Mena jumps in.
Yeah, I mean, I think for that one, honestly, it will really depend on the program and the professor. So, some programs may actually be sort of targeted to give people who've had some difficulty an opportunity. And so they're probably going to be more open to it. Whereas, if you're applying to, an assistant professor who is gunning for tenure themselves, like they're probably going to be trying to choose people who are all actually, they'll probably go for people who are already pretty experienced and so on. What you might try to do is address it. So if you have a opportunity to write a personal statement, do review. I think we went over last time some of the things to put and not put into personal statements for graduate school applications. Similar things also apply to those for research statements, but especially if it's like one semester where you were really having difficulties and the rest of your performance is pretty good, or you can also have a recommendation letter, even if they don't ask for one, get a recommendation letter, get, a professor that you're working with, either in a class or, even just a regular job, get them to send a note. I know a lot of times when we are interviewing, especially first or second year students for the undergraduate research opportunities program, I'll often ask them for 2 references, knowing they won't be research references, but can they even find two people? First of all, will they take the initiative to follow through on that? And second, can they find 2 people who can say, these are this person's strengths, and here are some things they need to work on.
Thank you so much. That's awesome. Mena, did you have any thoughts for that question?
I was just kind of going to come back to what Lolita said previously, that a lot of times it does depend maybe on the program or the professor that you're sort of applying to work on or what level you're on, but a lot of times they just want to see whether someone is really interested and focused and ready to just jump in and, you know, learn the skills. And you can, you know, once you have a foot in the door, you can really show that you're dependable, you always show up on time, you know, pay attention to details. All those kinds of things are sort of, when I'm looking for research assistants, it's not necessarily about like, oh, do they have all the specific skills, or like, I don't even look at, you know, GPA necessarily or anything like that for me specifically, but it's more about like, do they have an interest in working on the type of things I'm working on? And do they seem like someone who will really be able to learn the skills and put, you know, start to like be responsible and be independent and that kind of stuff. So I think you can find ways to, I think there's probably a workshop on this. It's either happened or will about just like kind of being able to emphasize the skills and the strong suits that you do have, and focus on some of that, so that like, I guess just ways to talk about yourself or like write about yourself in your resume or stuff like that, to show like, oh, even though like maybe like everyone has stuff that happens sometimes, you know, but how did you get through that? And what skills have you learned that will be really good for the position and things like that?
Yeah. So the other thing I would say, you know, especially if you're just starting off, you maybe, as Mina was saying, be better off sort of making that personal connection with somebody who will know you beyond the GPA. So talk to here at Michigan, it would be GSI, to use more universal language, your graduate student TAs and so on, get to know them, because often they're the ones who are making the hiring decisions for a lab. And even if they can't offer you a position, I do know it's tough this year. Again, ask if you can go to the lab meetings. One piece of advice that I give to people is don't just go to the lab meetings, participate in them. And it may be scary to be like the first person to ask a question or raise a point, and that's totally understandable. I've actually just given this advice to my graduate student who's trying to like sidle her way into a lab for a postdoc. And I said, okay, you don't have to be the first or second person to ask a question, but I want you to be the third or the fifth person to ask a question. So somebody else has already broken the ice, you kind of got in the field, you can even follow up on somebody else's question. And then that person can, even if they can't offer you a position, they can write you the recommendation letter for the REU, and they can say, oh, you know, I know like I wasn't able to offer them a position because we just don't have room, but I think they would be wonderful for your program because et cetera, et cetera.
Yes, thank you so much. And I think the last thing that I would want to add to that is that being able to articulate your interest, even in a very broad way, about a particular project is really going to help you, right? Like the truth is that psychology research, for people who have no understanding of it, can seem like it's a different language. There's so much jargon. So you would be surprised by, you know, if there's an application you're writing and you're describing what kind of research you're interested in, being able to correctly use the jargon relative to a certain area, that is going to help you. You're going to be leaps and bounds ahead of people. Being able to, you know, explain differences, being able to explain particularities of certain things that you're interested in. You don't have to propose some grand thesis, but thinking of, you know, an application you might be filling out where they have a simple statement like explain, you know, your interest in this research program. Being able to say, well, I've read A and B, and that made me interested in C. You're going to be way ahead of a lot of people, because most people are just going to be honest and say, you know, I took intro to psych or intro to this, but I really liked this area and I'm interested in it. And so, yeah, don't count yourself out. Also, a 3-point isn't, you know, it's not terrible, right? It's a B average. If you go to a school like University of Michigan, this is an incredibly competitive environment, but it's okay that, you know, we go through things happen. Your GPA is what it is. You know, let's move forward from that. Let's focus on your strengths and the things that you can control. So, yeah.
Yeah, finally, also to the more general question of how to stand out when you're applying for some of these national programs like the REUs, or here at Michigan, we have the Summer Research Opportunities Program, which, by the way, those of you who are Michigan students, you should know, we do take Michigan students for that as well. It's not just external students. So you also can apply for that. But I know, sometimes I have a contact at San Diego State University, and anytime that she runs the McNair program there, and anytime that she has a student who she thinks would be a good candidate, she is, I am getting like emails about her being, telling me what great students these are. I've also had students reach out to me before they apply to the program more generally to start that conversation. And then when their names get sent to me as possible candidates, that really stands out. So in that sense, it's sort of like the trial run for applying to graduate school.
All right. Well, there are no other questions in the chat. Last call for any questions for our panelists. All right. Well, I am not seeing anything popping up. And so if you have follow-up, send it to our email. I believe it's psych-scholars@umich.edu. And yeah, that concludes our panel. And so we want to thank you all so much for being here. Huge thank you to our panelists for taking time out of your afternoon to be here with us today. And yeah, good luck with all of your research applications. And remember, the Star Scholars app is due November 5th, and to reach out if you have any questions. Thank you all so much for coming, and have a great night.
And thank you so much to our panelists.
Thank you.